This is Money Stories.
Brought to you by Amy and Ben from Financial Services. Today, we're joined by Ben Harris. Ben is a mortgage broker, property investor, and host of Money Stories.
Okay, welcome back to our next episode of Money Stories. We've got another extra special one today. We've got Ben Harris in the hot seat, who's our usual co-host.
Hello everyone. I'm here to share my money story today.
Sounds
So
exciting.
it should be a fun one. And we decided just then that we wanted to talk about a little icebreaker question before we jump into it. And Janine suggested, what is your favourite chip?
And the reason I suggested that is because I was in an Uber ride or in an Uber car yesterday, and that was my question that I asked him. So thought we'll just open it up.
So what was the Uber driver's favourite chip?
His favourite chip was kettle plain. Okay. And I wasn't really 100% sure about that one.
It is a good one. I feel like any mood that you're in, kettle plain is good. Like you can always eat plain.
Yeah, I much prefer something like Cheetos or Twisties or...
Yeah, but you have to be in the mood, don't you reckon?
Yeah, salt vinegar.
I don't know. I think I only eat the plain if it's the only thing left.
So what's your favourite then?
I didn't realise we were doing a flavour and a brand. But if we're doing that, then I'll go salt and vinegar is definitely my flavour.
Yep.
And then I'll just go with the Smith's, the classic Smith's salt and vinegar. I like
Smith's
the,
salt and
the
vinegar.
crinkle cut.
I feel like that is something that you definitely need to name the brand for because all the salt and vinegars are completely
so different.
Yeah.
Smith's I find a bit too tangy. Like you can't eat a whole packet, whereas you can eat a whole packet of kettle salt and vinegar.
Yeah, I like the crinkle cut though,
Yeah, that's fair.
rather than the flat of the kettle.
That's fair. I like a grain wave every now and then too. A sour cream and chives grain wave.
They are good.
They're crunchy.
And they do have the crinkle cut as well.
They are
Okay,
good.
all
And you can have them with dip or no dip.
I reckon it's time to get on with the story. How long can you talk about chips for? I don't know.
I could probably do a whole podcast on chips, I reckon. Okay, so let's get our money story over to Ben today and he's going to read it
Here
out
you
for
go,
us.
Ben.
Thank you. Let's get into the money story. Okay, here we go.
Let's go.
Today, breaking into the property market feels tougher than ever. Rising prices, stagnant wages, high interest rates, and skyrocketing living expenses. It's a lot. It can seem like the goalposts are always moving, leaving young people wondering, is this even achievable anymore? Let me take you back to my own story. I was born into a home where property investing was regularly discussed. I knew from a young age that if I wanted to make real money, it wasn't just about working and receiving a wage, but more so making your money work for you. At 15, I started saving every dollar I could while working long hours as an apprentice electrician, earning less than $10 an hour. Living at home definitely helped me keep my expenses low, but even then, saving for a 20% deposit felt like climbing Everest. By the time I applied for my first loan at 18, I was earning just $40,000 a year. It wasn't easy, but I did it. I became a homeowner at 18 and started my property investment journey. Owning that first home wasn't just about buying a house to live in. It was about opening doors to a future filled with opportunity. That first step led to many others. Over the years, I've built homes, invested, and experienced the highs and lows that the property market can throw at you. Each moment taught me something new. From the thrill of getting the keys to a new home to the challenges of being a landlord or selling. But looking back, one thing stands out. I didn't do it alone. I had guidance from somebody who had done it all before. My mum, Janine, who is a mortgage broker, helped me create a plan and navigate my way into the property market. That guidance made all the difference. I realised that not everyone had someone like that in their corner. And that's why, after finishing my apprenticeship, I switched career paths and became a mortgage broker myself. I wanted to be the mentor that others may not have, helping them understand the process, navigate their finances, and ultimately achieve their own financial dreams. The road isn't always smooth. Saving for a deposit, figuring out your borrowing capacity, and navigating government schemes can feel very overwhelming. But here's the truth. With the right knowledge, guidance, and a solid plan, it's all possible. That's why I do what I do. I break down the complexity, tailor strategies to individual goals, and make finances clear, easy, and manageable. So, what's your big dream, and who's helping you make it a reality?
Very interesting. Very good story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Shall we throw it back to the start when
Yeah,
you're
let's get into it.
18 and you're thinking about buying your first home? How did you go, and you're only an apprentice, how did you go saving all that money? What did you do?
Yeah, so thankfully for me, I was able to live at home during that time, so that kept my expenses pretty low. But even then, that money that was coming in, I was working a lot of overtime to build up my savings, and that money that was coming in, I still had to put that away and start saving that. So I turned to my mum and dad for some advice, and they told me to open a separate savings account, put that money away straight away so I don't see it anymore, and just, get that money out of sight and out of mind, and just be putting that away as early as possible and as much as possible.
And how much do you reckon you were putting away?
I reckon, again, I'm pretty fortunate that I was able to live at home and not have any rental expenses, and parents were buying me groceries. And at that time, I was only, during the time I was saving, I was 16 to 18, so I wasn't going out partying or anything.
Yep.
But I think I was putting away probably over 80% of my income, I'd say, after taxes.
For how long?
For pretty much the time from when I was 15 and a half to 18, basically.
Yeah, wow.
And clearly
so
that's
almost 3 years.
Yeah, and clearly that's not something that most people can do, because they're not in that situation where they are living at home and that they've got somebody else that's helping them with that whole everyday expenses.
Yeah.
But it was a good effort, and you definitely got there.
With your mindset at the time, like you were saying, not everyone's able to do that. Were any of your friends doing that, or was it like you were in a completely different stage to them? And did you ever feel like you were missing out on going out and doing stuff with them because you were putting all of your money away?
Yeah, good question. So most of my friends during that time were completing their HSC. So they were doing year 11 and year 12. And while they weren't making money during that time because they were doing their schoolwork, they were working big hours to complete their assignments, study for any upcoming tests, and make sure they were in a position to go down the paths that they chose. So instead of me doing that study, I was putting more of my time into working overtime and working at my job and making my money and then putting that away. And I guess I didn't really miss out on too much because it wasn't like my friends were going out and partying. We were only 16 to 18 during that time anyway, and they were focused on their studies at the same time. I didn't really miss out on too much during that time, but I can see that if I was doing that savings in my early 20s or later in my teens, that I may have missed out on some things that my friends were doing at that time.
You may not have been able to go so hard so quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I suppose another point to raise around all of that, the whole time that Ben was working, we were looking at what's your income, what income level do you have to be able to buy the block of land that you're wanting to buy to be in that position to buy that first home.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just keep saving. It was more about how much income, how much overtime do you actually need to do this week or this year to be able to be in the position where the bank is going to lend you the appropriate amount of money that you need to buy that property.
Yeah, and I think that really kept me on track as well, because it wasn't like I had this really unobtainable goal that was going to take me 2 years just to get there. I checked in with my mum and dad at the start, organised this plan, and then they were checking in with me each month to see if I was actually on my way to that plan and if I was actually going to make it to what I was
And it was actually broken down to, okay, just do the block of land first, just get that block of land, and then off the back of that, okay, now we're in the position of doing the actual construction. So now what does that look like? So like you're saying, it was broken down into stages to make it not so daunting and an easier way of getting in.
Yeah.
What do you think your motivation was for getting into the property market so young? Why did you have to do that before 18?
I really wanted to own a home when I was 18. Like I wanted to purchase my first property when I was 18.
And why?
And I don't have an actual reason why. I think it was just the way that we were brought up in our lives. That was like something that I almost should be doing.
Yeah.
So that was just almost like in the back of my mind as like a good step that I should be taking. And I believe that Janine bought her first property at 18 or 19. So I just wanted to be able to match that and make sure that I was like taking the correct steps to get to the position that she is now, basically.
Yeah.
And just making sure I was on the track to achieving that financial goal at the end of the day.
And how do you think that buying that property at that age has helped you with that?
Yeah, buying that property so early, it's opened up so many more pathways for me because not only did I buy that property, I then, after the time frame that I needed to live in it, I moved out and that property became an investment property. And I'd already put in a lot of money into that property to get the loan down and make sure I was able to do what I wanted to do. So that property, when I turned it into an investment property, the rental income that it was generating was almost like paying off the loan anyway.
Yep.
So once I got to that point, I only had to put in, say, $50 to $100 each week or each month to keep that property afloat and just keep it looking after itself. And that meant that I was able to go back to uni, change career paths, and just do other things that I wanted to do in my life that I may not have been able to do if I was trying to still save money or still start my journey.
Yeah.
And then once I got back into the position that, hey, I'm ready to start looking at doing other things now, that property had gone from being, say, a $500,000 property to a $900,000 property. And so that it's just made me $400,000 without me actually doing anything, just it growing over time.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That, I suppose that is the advantage of the whole like gain associated with the property. I was just looking at information just this week that the Newcastle properties had gone from $892,000 as a median house price to $939, I think that were the figures. And so it was about a $47,000 increase. And it's just that you just have to have that property, that you own that property in your name, and then you're not having to actually physically do anything, obviously, except for make your repayments and everything associated with keeping the property. But then you're the person that's benefiting from all that gain, all that capital gain. So that was exactly what happened
with you. Was
you.
that increase over a year?
Over a year, from February to February.
So it's just
and that was CoreLogic data that just came out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had, from when I bought my first property to when I eventually sold that property, I had that property for just under 6 years. And yeah, the amount of growth that it went through over that 6 years was just unreal. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to save that amount of money that it did grow.
Yeah.
So.
And we're actually really lucky, the location that we're in, because Newcastle, Lower Hunter and Upper Hunter were all in the top 10 for the last year in property growth.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, so it's great.
Do you know why?
I just think it's just because of the amount of opportunities that we've got around here. We've got so much opportunity. We've got so many new infrastructure coming in, like the airport and the harbour and everything that they're doing there, and then everything up the valley with the coal mines. We've just got so much going on. So we're in a really good spot to be able to take advantage of buying your property and letting it grow, letting that asset grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Back to Ben. Why did you change career paths from being an electrician to a mortgage broker? Was it the fact that you saw that growth in your property and you were excited by it, or you were interested in the property market?
Yeah, so probably two reasons. One, I'm a bit more, I like to use my mind a bit more rather than use my hands. So going down the electrician path, I was doing a lot of like hands-on work and like working outside during the days. And then I decided that I like to use my mind more than using my hands. So I started looking at different opportunities with how I could use my brain more and work in different fields that way.
Yeah.
And then two, I guess I just got a bit burnt out working as an electrician. Like I was doing those long days when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, trying to save up that money. And so I was almost working, like some weeks I'd work more overtime than what I actually worked standard hours. So yeah, I just was doing a lot of work in that industry and just decided that I
I think in a couple of those years you were working like 49 weeks, weekends.
In my first year, I believe I did 50 weekends or 49, 50 weekends, weekend shifts. And then in my second year, I did more than that. I think I did 51 or 51 weekend shifts.
Yeah.
That was like Saturdays and Sundays, so it wasn't every Saturday.
Yeah.
But it was probably like 40 to 45 Saturdays and then 5 or so Sundays.
Yeah. So it wasn't like it came easy. It was a big effort.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot, but the main reason that I was doing that was because I had that goal in mind and wanted to achieve that goal of property ownership when I was 18.
Yeah. And now being a mortgage broker, has it helped you with like success in the property market?
Yeah, it's weird because obviously we have Janine, who would have been our mortgage broker if I didn't decide to become a mortgage broker. And so I could have run any questions by her and found out exactly what I could do at any time, and she would have helped me out. But yes, definitely getting into this industry has opened my mind a lot because you see different things that people are doing and it just opens different opportunities, or you start thinking about different things, or why are they doing that? How can we help them do that? And then you start researching into it and find out that, hey, that is a cool path to look down. And then so you might start talking to other people about that, and then they might have other ideas off the back of that. So
yeah, so you get exposed to a lot.
Talking to more people and more exposure around property that just gets you going a bit more.
Yeah. And what are you seeing young people do today? Are they
Yeah,
following
so-
like similar steps to what you did, or are you noticing any different trends?
There's probably, I guess, a big trend like right now is rent vesting,
Yep.
where young people will use a family guarantor and go out and buy an investment property. So that way they're getting into the market, they're owning an asset, and that asset's going to grow for them, but they don't actually have to come up with 100% of the repayments to afford that asset.
Yeah.
They can rent that asset out, similar to what I did, and have someone paying for that mortgage while they're either living at home with their parents still, or living with friends, or even renting somewhere else for cheaper than what they would if they had that property.
Yeah.
So that's probably a big thing that we see at the moment, people going out and maybe not buying an owner-occupied home straight away, but purchasing an investment as their first property.
Yeah, it is smart. And you can rent in some really cool places as well.
Yeah.
For the same amount as a mortgage.
Yeah, it's definitely got its drawbacks as well. So you don't get all the government grants and incentives because you're not buying as an owner-occupied home. But to go against that, to get those incentives, you have to live in the property for 12 months at the moment. So that's 12 months of rent that you would get. So you got to weigh up that, is that 12 months of rent, or are those incentives going to be better or more beneficial for you?
Yeah.
And obviously there'd be capital gains issues associated with it being an investment too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But you also get the tax.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes, a tax-effective option. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of stuff to weigh up, but that is one thing that we're seeing a lot of young people do, just because it doesn't add too much stress and financial pressure onto them, but they are getting into the property market and that having an asset that does grow for them.
And it is really hard to get into the property market now with no help. So,
so what's your advice? I'll put this to both of you. What's your advice for the people that don't have help to get into the property market?
Yeah, it can be very hard without help to actually get in, but the biggest piece of advice that I would give is find out what your options actually are, because you can be sitting back and saying, oh, it's really hard, I can't do anything, and not actually know what you can do, and that's one thing. But then actually going out, finding out what you can do, and maybe you can't do anything, but at least you know exactly what you can do, and you'll also know the pathway to achieve what you want to achieve.
Yep.
But we've got clients, we've got like brothers that weren't able to do something separately, so they've done it together. We've got so many parents now that know that it's hard to get in, and they also know that it's better to get in sooner than later.
Yep.
They're happy to then use their home as part security. So it's more just about looking at all the different ways that you could do it and having a conversation with somebody about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's about reaching out and figuring out what options are available, because you might have parents who are in the position to help, but they actually don't know what that help looks like for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you reach out to someone, figure out what's available, and then they talk to your parents and go through how that actually looks, your parents may be more comfortable to actually help you out.
Yeah. And who do you reach out to?
But you can reach out to a mortgage broker or a bank.
Yeah.
Probably a mortgage broker is a better option, because if you reach out to a bank, let's just say, for example, that bank doesn't do family guarantees,
Yeah.
then they're not going to give you that as an option.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to give you as much information about it because
Yeah.
they don't have that product.
Yeah.
Mortgage broker is probably a better person to reach out to in that scenario, because they've got access to all the different banks. They can see exactly what you can do with all the different banks and see which pathways could actually work best for you.
And let's face it, mortgage brokers, and all your mortgage brokers you speak to, they're just there to help you. So
Yeah.
if any mortgage broker would be happy to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And it's all about the education and making sure that people understand what they can do and putting them in that position to be able to take that next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're just recent data that's come out saying that 76% of all loans are now, all home loans, are now written by mortgage brokers. So
Yeah, wow.
it's
And that's been trending up. as
definitely
well,
trending up, yeah.
Yeah.
which is a good
It's
sign.
great.
Yeah. It
Because
is.
it means that people are getting there and having the ability to look at so many different options. You just don't go to one place and think this is my only one option. No, that's not the way it is. You can go to one place, a mortgage broker, but then you've got lots of options to choose from.
Yeah.
And Ben, you mentioned in your own story that looking back, one thing stood out, and it was the guidance, and that support made all the difference. So what do you love now about being a mortgage broker and being able to provide that guidance and support for young people entering the market?
Yeah. First of all, just providing them with their options and letting them know what they can do.
Yeah.
But even then, people come in and they'll have one option in mind and they think, hey, I can't afford to do this. And then just like opening their eyes to, all the different possibilities and saying, maybe you can't afford what you're looking to do here, but did you know you could actually do this? And it just gets them like thinking differently and gets them like miles ahead of where they would have been if they didn't seek that advice.
Yeah.
And so it's just really like good to help them out and get them like started along their journey and make sure that their journey starts off on the right step and as early as it can.
Do you think you have any client success stories that come to mind that you could share of people taking that advice and applying it?
You would have one that you're doing right now.
Yeah, there's so many client success stories. Like
Yeah.
you just see, like I said, you just have a conversation with someone and tell them what they can do, and it just opens up their mind to all the possibilities. So
Yeah.
we've started working with someone who's bought their first home, and 3-4 years later, or it might be 5 years later, but they're up to buying their sixth
Yeah, wow.
property.
And
So
how
they're-
old are they?
They wouldn't be much older than me, probably
Yeah.
27, 28. And
Yeah,
they're
wow.
up to buying their sixth property. And I'm pretty sure we helped out their parents as well in the past. Janine helped out their parents, and she had that conversation with them, which opened up their minds, and they passed that knowledge down to their kids. And now he's going through that process. And
So it creates generational wealth as well.
yeah. So
It's really cool.
it's all about just letting them know what they can do and opening them up to that possibility of they can achieve what they're wanting to achieve. They might just have to put some different things in motion to achieve that. And then, just seeing that grow and grow and grow over like more and more years.
And again, it wasn't an easy thing for them to go out and do. You had to then say, this is the amount of income that you need to make to do the next step, and this is the amount of rental income that you need to be receiving. So
Yeah.
it's more about working together and like guiding people along the way. But then obviously they've also got to have the fire in the belly for it, because
Did they go find their own investments to hit like that rental target, or did they work with someone to help them acquire them properties?
Yeah, so each person probably does it a little bit differently, and I guess it depends what you're looking to buy.
Yep.
I see that if people are looking to buy something local, they tend to do it themselves because they know the area, they know what sort of rental return they want, and if that area is good for investing. Or some people might not even know if it's good for investing, but they just want to invest in the area that they live in. But then you see people might also use a buyer's agent if they're looking to buy in another state or further away from where they live and they don't know the area as well. They might reach out and get some support, in the ways of a buyer's agent
Yeah.
who can look at the stats in that area and see what the rental return is like, what the vacancy is like, and just see which areas stack up well.
Yeah, okay. So if someone was on the fence right now about entering the property market, what would you say to them?
It would come down to their situation.
Yeah.
Because
You always say that.
you would have to look at why they're on the fence. If they're on the fence because interest rates are high and they might not be able to afford it, then we might have to look at, hey, what can you actually afford to do? But if they're just on the fence because they're not sure if they should go ahead with a purchase now or wait 6 months or wait a year, I'm sure everyone's heard the saying, time in the market is better than timing the market.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd definitely tell them to get in as soon as possible and just let that growth just work over the next 5 to 10 years for them. And maybe, who knows, property prices might dip over the next 6 months, next year, and they might say, oh, I should have waited, but wait 5, 10 years and then come back and say, then have a look back and see where it was when you got in and where you are. Because
I love looking at, there's this page on Instagram called $1 Million Listings Sydney.
Yeah.
And I saw a post yesterday and the house was last sold in Sydney for $325,000 in 1978.
Oh,
It's
wow.
on the market today for $85 million.
yeah, well,
You could save $85 million in that amount of time.
yeah.
Obviously, it's like an amazing house.
Yeah.
And on the harbour, it's got its own ocean pool and everything, but still.
Yeah.
hopefully that was their own occupied property.
Yeah.
It's $84 million of capital gains tax. That would hurt.
It would
That's
hurt.
good. Okay, do you want to move on to a game?
No, I want to finish with my final question that I always finish with.
Yeah.
If you could sum up your money story in a sentence or a word, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say seek advice and take the first step to get started on your journey.
Yep. Cool.
That is good. Good advice.
All right, now we can go to the game.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ben, for sharing your money
worries,
story.
thank you.
It was very good, and I'm sure it will help a lot of young people. So the game name today is called What's the Biggest Mistake? And how it works is I'm going to say first home buying topic and you're going, wait, clap. Clap. My thing's about to run out anyway. You say your first home buying topic and your guest has to name the biggest mistake buyers make in that area. I'm going to say a first home buying topic and you're going to name the
Yes.
biggest
Yeah.
mistake.
Biggest mistake you'll make with deposits.
Okay, I've got to read and put this on. Okay, so we're going to start with a game. The game name is called What's the Biggest Mistake?
Okay.
So I'm going to say something about buying your first home and then you've got to name the biggest mistake that people make in that area.
Is it like I'm guessing what is the biggest mistake or the biggest mistake that I see?
Kind of the biggest mistake or like what you think is the
Okay.
biggest mistake.
Yep. Yeah, cool.
Okie dokie, you ready?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
This
ready.
one's kind of hard.
The pressure.
This is a bit of pressure, and I'm sure Janine can jump in as well and see what she thinks as well.
Alrighties. What do you think the biggest mistake people make is with deposits?
Yeah, okay. I think the first thing that jumps to my mind with deposits is people not knowing how big or how small of a deposit they need to actually enter the market. So a lot of people would have heard that you need a 20% deposit and they would probably still be running with that today.
Yep.
But there's actually so many different options for using a 10% deposit, using a 5% deposit, and those different options can be whether you're like a first home buyer or can be the occupation type that you have. They can be using a small deposit and paying LMI.
It can also be using no deposit.
Yeah, using no deposit, having a family guarantor. So there's so many options in relation to deposits.
It's great if you have a deposit, but it's not. It doesn't stop you from moving forward if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what I would say is probably the biggest misconception about deposits.
Yeah.
That you have to have one.
Yeah, that you
Yeah.
have to.
There's ways
So
around
they
it.
can't hold you back.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, Janine, do you want to ask the next one?
Okay, biggest mistake when choosing a lender.
Okay. I'm just going with whatever comes to my mind.
I feel like I
Yeah.
know what you're going to say
Is-
here.
Yeah. So the biggest mistake when choosing a lender would be, in my opinion, going straight to that lender.
Yeah.
Who knows, you might have picked them right if you've done your research online and you've looked at a few different lenders and then gone straight to that lender. You may have picked them right.
But then that's not going straight to the lender.
But yeah, that's also not going straight to the lender. But even then, you may, on the off chance, may have just gone straight to that lender and
Jagged
picked them
it.
right.
Yeah.
But it's, in my opinion, it's much better to go to a mortgage broker and compare a bunch of different lenders,
Yeah.
see who's got the best rates, see who's going to allow you to do
Yeah.
what you're wanting to do,
Yeah.
and just
Well,
get your options.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
so true. So true. See, I thought you were going to say the biggest mistake is just going to the place that your parents have banked with for 40 years.
Yeah, that would be similar to just going straight to that lender. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
definitely be one of the bigger mistakes, I think.
Okay, how about this one?
You could land there in the end, but
Yeah.
just look around and
And
look at your
yeah,
options.
they could even be like a preferred lender.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You might weigh up
Nothing
your
wrong with that.
options and then
Yeah.
you might say, hey, there's a lender over here that's got 0.05% better rate,
Yeah.
but I actually like that lender that I was going to go to first.
Yeah.
You might just go to them anyway and just
Yeah.
cop that like smaller or higher rate. But at least, weigh up your options and see what is actually out there.
Yep. Okay, let's do this one. Biggest mistake that people make with government grants.
Yeah, okay. It's probably going to be on a similar theme to the last two, but just not knowing what grants are available is probably one of the bigger mistakes because, like I said earlier, you don't actually have to go out and use those grants. If you wanted to buy an investment property and waive your right to those grants, that's still a decent idea depending on your situation.
Yep.
But not even having a look at those grants, I think, would be a big mistake because you do have to weigh up your options, know which pathway includes what, and then actually decide for yourself which way you want to go.
But you also have to know, when you're talking about like grants and schemes, you also have to know the cut-off points. Because if you're offering on a property, you don't want to get there and offer just above a cut-off point where like stamp duty might cost you nothing. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're offering on this and you're like, oh man, now I've got to pay all these extra thousands of dollars because I didn't really look at what I should have been looking at to make sure that I was in a position to move forward the best way possible for myself.
Yeah.
That's
So,
actually a good one. Yeah.
yeah, knowing what's available and the eligibility requirements around how you can use that.
Yeah. And where do you find that?
You can talk to your mortgage broker
Yeah.
and get some information about that. But also, Housing Australia would have all their schemes for Australia-wide on their
Yeah.
website. And then each different state also has their own different scheme. So that would be on their state website.
Yeah.
And it can also be the same with incomes.
Oh,
Because
really?
there's also cut-off points in relation to incomes, as into if you can get schemes or if you can't get schemes. So you could be thinking like, I'm doing the best I can by going out and doing 51 weeks worth of overtime. But by doing that, it might get there and just put you just over the limit.
Yeah.
So we've had people that we're saying to them, hey, look, just be mindful. We don't want you going over that limit because if you go over that limit, then that scheme's off the table for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you really have to look at all those little fine
Yeah.
details.
And that income eligibility can be very hard to correct if you've already gone over that limit. So, like reaching out and figuring out your options earlier rather than later can really help with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you figure out in the middle of the year that your income's going to be over, then you can back off on that overtime or back off on the hours that you're working.
Yeah.
But if you've only got a month left to do that before that income's locked in, then your options are a lot more limited.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
seems strange because you would think, okay, the more money I can make, the better it's going to be. Sometimes, yes, it's better, but then it's also, sometimes it's not if it doesn't allow you to get schemes and grants that the government provide.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the biggest mistake? This one's very wide,
Yeah.
but we spoke about it the whole time. What about the biggest mistake that first home buyers make?
Yeah, okay. Biggest mistake that first-hand buyers
It
make.
even rhymes.
Probably a bit of everything that we've touched on, really.
Yeah.
Like not knowing your options, not knowing what's available to you, just going straight to the bank that your mum and dad uses, or even just asking your mum and dad what your options are when maybe they don't know.
Yeah.
And just, not having that guidance and thinking that what you don't know
Yeah.
So thinking that, hey, I can't do this and I know I can't do this. But then if you actually had that conversation with someone, maybe you can't do that, but there might be other ways around to achieve what you're wanting to do. Yeah, I think just the biggest mistake that they probably make is like all of the things that we've talked about today and just all of them together, really.
And off the back of that, another thing would be that a lot of the time, or sometimes they think that having a credit card is going to help them get a home loan, or having a personal loan is going to help them get a home loan because that shows that they can make repayments. But that actually gets there and decreases your serviceability. And so you then can't borrow as much because you have these other debts. That's a big mistake that we see a lot too, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like someone going out and getting a personal loan to buy a car, thinking, hey, I'll buy the car now and then in 3 to 6 months I'll buy a property. But then when they get to buying that property, because they've got that big car loan, they actually can't do what they're wanting to do on the property side of things.
But then they were told that by having a car loan or having a credit card that it's going to improve my credit rating.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely I would say seek advice early. Like even if you're not in the position to do something, at least you would get a pathway in place and you can start putting those building bricks in place to create what you want to create.
Yeah.
And then can I just say one more? Another one would be that you don't have to buy the biggest and best property first. You just have to get into the market, because once you're in the market, you then have the option of upgrading in the future. So it's not about I've got to buy my final home. I'm actually buying my first home.
Yeah.
We can do the upgrades later.
Yeah, definitely.
And then if we get there and keep our loan lower, it means that we're paying less interest. We can pay more off the principal, which means that we can get to that end result at a quicker rate.
Yeah.
We'll finish with one that's just a personal one. What's the biggest mistake you've made?
Okay.
That's a good one.
That is, that's a tricky one. That's a good one and a tricky one. I'd probably say this is on a very similar trajectory to what I think Janine went, but I'd probably say the biggest mistake that I've made is putting too much into like owner-occupied properties early on.
Yep.
So I had my first property, which I turned into an investment, and it created a lot of wealth there. But then I put a lot of that into my next owner-occupied property. So if I could reverse that, I think I would, and put more of that or less of that into an owner-occupied property. But yeah.
And why was it a mistake?
Just because like I then lived in that property for a year or 2 years, and now I've started looking at other options and how I can go out and buy a place, renovate it, add growth to that place, and then on-sell it and do that a few times. But I maybe don't have as many options available because I've got this owner-occupied property now, which I would have to sell to do those other options.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a huge problem to have. Like I've obviously built quite a good portfolio for myself, or a good start. But yeah, still that would probably be one of my bigger mistakes.
Yeah. That was a good one to finish on.
It was.
Some growth.
Yeah.
Some growth for you.
Yeah. Good
Okay,
to know.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you, Janine, for co-hosting.
Not a problem at all.
And we'll talk to everyone else in our next episode.
Too easy. Thanks for having me.
See you around.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
This is Money Stories.
Brought to you by Amy and Ben from In Financial Services.